Today's Rambam, Wednesday, Tez Zayin Kislev, begins Pedic Chi, the 9th, 10th, and 11th Pedic of Hilchos Shemittah v'Yovel. Very beautiful sugyas, very beautiful prakim. In the beginning of the 9th Pedic of Hilchos Shemittah, the Rambam brings down mitzvah asay lahashmit hamilva b'shvius. It's a positive mitzvah to disregard or to erase a loan in the year of Shemittah, and meaning a loan that was even before Shemittah, or especially before Shemittah, should be erased during the Shemittah year or before the Shemittah year. It's a machlekes. Shenemar kshamayt kol baal mashe yodoi v'atevei achayiv she'aber lo shvius. If somebody demands a loan that passed the year of Shemittah, for example, in the 8th year, he says, "Listen, you owe me money." Over he, in addition to not doing the positive mitzvah of Shemait, he violates a negative commandment. You shouldn't demand, you shouldn't collect, you shouldn't be overbearing on your friend and on your brother. Says the Rambam, very important halacha beis, ein shmitas ksafim neheges min atayra ela bizman shahayovel noyeg. Biblically, this mitzvah that we just described, this positive mitzvah of shmitas ksafim, of wiping away a chayiv on shvius, on shmittah, only applies at the same time that there is a yovel year, a jubilee year. Sheyeh sham shmitas karka. That on that since there's a yovel, so therefore there is also shmitas karka minat biblically. Why? It's a similar concept, just like on yovel. This is beautiful Lashonos of the Rambam. Somebody that learned the sugya, the whole background, realizes how each word in the Rambam is gold, because similarly to the fact that the property reverts back to its original owner without any money, so it's a similar concept of erasing a debt without money. And this is a Kabbalah. This is Torah Sheba'al Peh. This is something that we received from Moshe Rabbeinu, not Halacha L'Moshe Misinai, but this is a Kabbalah. Amru Chachamim Bizman She'ata Mashmit Karka. The Chachamim said the same in the same vein, or at the same time, or only when we have the mitzvah of Shmitas Karka, which is where there's no where the fields revert back to the original owner. Atomashmik sofim b'chol makim, bein ba'aretz, bein b'chutz ha'aretz. Ubizman she'ein shom shmitas karka, where there's no shmitas karka, ein atomashmik sofim b'shvius afilu ba'aretz. When there's no shmita, we don't even have this mitzvah of shmitas ksofim, even in Eretz Yisrael. It's a very relevant halacha. So we'll talk about this right now. In general, I just want to mention a few statements. The Shlomo Zalman Auerbach in Mincha Shleima has a beautiful hagdara on this whole subject, the topic that we're going to spend just a few short minutes talking about. And he says he wants to understand whether this din of Shmitas Ksafim, is this a din in Mammon? Is this a monetary issue? Is this something that we law, or is it a Isser Dika law, or is it something a type of a prohibition? And what's the nafkimina? What's the difference if it's a suffix? If it's a suffix, it's a suffix Mammonis or suffix Isser. Mammonam mutal the suffix Isser. There's many, so just keep that in mind. The psukim that relate to this topic of Shmitas Ksafim are, of course, in Dvarim. First, it starts about Sheishonim Tizra Sartzecha V'Yasafta Tvuasa. Do the field. 6 years you should plant the field. V'Ashvius, and on the 7th year, the Shmittah year, Tishmitenu Netashta. It's a pasuk in Shema. It's not in Dvarim. On the 7th year should be Shemittah, and then it talks about in Dvarim. And you have to give, if you have poor people, you should lend them, you should give them. However, he goes into he segues into the concept of Shemittah, and he tells us about layigos, about we shouldn't. So the question becomes: is there a connection between Shmitas Ksofim and Shmitas Karkos? Whether, in other words, is it the same Shmitta? Obviously, the Torah uses the same Sheidish, Shin, Memtes, Shmitta, Shamait, etc. But the question becomes: is is it one din, or is it two mutually different dinim? So, the commentaries talk about the fact that there's many differences between the laws of Shemitah's Karka, the agricultural laws of Shemitah, and Shemitah's Ksofim, the laws of loans. Number one, there are different times. Number one, excuse me, the essential difference. Shemitah's Ksofim is, according to most Paiskim, and that's something that we will talk about. The Rebbe in Likutei Sichos also seems to indicate this, that Shmitas Ksofim is a chayvas haguf, chayvas gavra, is something that's connected to a person, and it also has a connection. Whether it doesn't, it's not like Shmitas Karka that is only in Eretz Yisrael, or maybe certain lands that are mamish next to Eretz Yisrael, but bigger in Eretz Yisrael. Shmitas Ksofim is a chayvas gavra, chayvas haguf. Mashenken, on the other hand, Shmitas Karka is a chayvas karka. It has nothing to do with a person, nothing to do with a specific person, and it's also only in Eretz Yisrael. Also, the timing of these two Shmitas. The timing of Shmitas Karka is, of course, in certain related to the seventh year. There's some additions, Tosfos Shvius, etc. But it's related throughout the seventh year. However, the law of Shmitas Ksofim, according to most Paiskim, is in a 1 minute period. Some people say it's at the end of the seventh year, like it clearly says in the pasuk, Miketz Sheva Shonim. At the end of the seventh year, you have to do the mitzvah of Shmitas Ksofim, not throughout the seventh year. Okay, so we have a fundamental machlekes rishonim that leads into halacha lemaisa. The Rambam here, in our Rambam today, says that Shmitas Ksofim, this mitzvah of forgiving a loan, is connected to Yovel, connected to whether we have the Jubilee year. And this is the source of the Rambam is a Gemara in Gittin. It's a well-known Gemara. The Gemara says in Gittin, Daf Lamed Vav Amud Aleph, Tanya Rebbe Omer, V'zeh Dvar HaShmita Shamait. This is the subject of Shmita Shamait. You should forgive. So the Gemara says, why does it say two times? B'shtei Shmitas Akas Madaber. The pasuk is talking about two different Shmitas. Achas Shmitas Karka, Achas Shmitas Ksofim. Bisman Shatom. So there is a connection between them. Bisman Shatom Mishamet Karka, in the time that it's applicable to do Shmitas Karka, Atom Mishamet Ksofim. Bisman Shiatom Mishamet Karka, Iatom Mishamet Ksofim. So the Rambam learns the timing or the condition of Mishamet Karka refers to what we said before, when the karka, when the real estate, when the land, when the farm reverts back to its original owner. That's called Shmitas Karka. In other words, we take the karka back, Mishamet Karka. It's not just Shav Saha'aretz. It's not not to be confused with the concept of that the land has to rest. The Rambam learns, what does it mean when the Gemara says Bisman Sha'ata Mishamet Karka? This refers to the laws of Yovel, that Yovel accomplishes that land, most types of lands. I think we'll learn that in tomorrow's shir about the different lands that revert back in Yovel or not. But the the mishamet karka means that the yovel accomplishes that the ownership of the fields reverts back to the original owner. So when does that happen? In Yovel says the Rambam. So it's clear that Shemittah's ksafim, the forgiveness of loans, is connected to Yovel. The Rashi has a different opinion. Rashi over there in the Gemara learns that it's much narrower and potentially more difficult or more obligatory. Rashi learns that Shmitas Ksafim, the forgiveness of loans, is connected to whether we keep the laws of actual Shemitah on the seventh year. And what does he say? How does he learn the words of Rebbe? Bisman shiata mishamet karka. In other words, simply that as we said, completely the opposite of the way we learned in the Rambam. When there is the laws of Shmitas Karka, when there is the laws of the sabbatical year, then you do the Shmitas Ksafim. Otherwise, you don't do it. And there's a big difference. There's a big difference between the two, and we're not going to get into it right now. So the Rambam learns that midrabanan, that even though biblically there is no din of shmitas ksafim, forgiveness of loans is manazeh, but midivrei sefer, rabbinical, there is a mitzvah, there is a chiyuv to not collect the loan bisman hazeh b'chol makim. Why? Says the Rambam, kedei shalei tishtakach teres shmitas ksafim Yisrael. In order we should never forget that there was such a concept. That's the Rambam Shita in our Rambam. The Trumas Hadeshen, which is another Rishon, he says just the opposite. He learns that the Bisman Hazeh is Bisman Hazeh. It's only Midrabanan, but Midiraisa. The only time that we do Shmitas Ksafim is when we have Shmitas Ksafim, but and therefore the Trumas Hadeshen learns that the din of Shmitas Ksafim, since it's connected to much more to Shmitas Aretz, we only conduct ourselves, or we only keep the laws of Shmitas Ksafim in the lands around Eretz Yisrael. So the machlekes between the Rambam and the Trumas Hadeshen is whether they both agree that biblically there's no Shmitas Ksafim. The Rambam said b'chol zman and b'chol makim, everywhere, because since it's shlei tishtakach, if it's leit tishtakach, so just like biblically it's all over. The same thing, as we said in the beginning of this year, the same thing, leit tishtakach will be everywhere, even far away from Eretz Yisrael. The Trumas Hadeshen doesn't learn like that. Trumas Hadeshen learns it's a midrabanan, and the Rabbanan Degidin at best it should be only either in Eretz Yisrael or only on the lands really close to Eretz Yisrael. Lahalacha, the Shulchan Aruch Rabbi Yosef Karo paskins in Choshen Mishpat Siman Samach Zayin, he paskins like the Rambam, and he says as follows: when we divrei seifrim, rabbinically, Shmitas Ksafim, the law of forgiving loans, Neheges Bisman Hazeh b'chol makom, everywhere. So this is clearly like the Rambam, and the Rambam writes, this is how all the Paiskim agree, but he does allow for some leniency in the Trumas Hadeshen. He says, some people say the Ein Shmita Neges Bizman Hazeh, She'ein Negim the Shmita Klau Bizman Hazeh. He does mention in Trumas Hadeshen that the Shmita Ksafim in Chutz La'aretz is not Negim Bizman Hazeh. Okay, so okay. The one of the beautiful chakiris and that is dealt with in the laws of Shemitah, both in Shemitah's Karka and also Shemitah's Ksafim, and the Rebbe in L'Kutei Sichos seems to connect both of them, both the essence of Shemitah's Karka, what we're about to talk about with Shemitah's Ksafim. The question is whether it's what we call afkaita the malka or or you have to say you have to actually do something. Whether it happens automatically because this is what the Torah wanted, that when the seventh year comes, for example, fruit. Let's do it to make it easier. Start with that. Whether the produce is something that God Himself said, even though it's your real estate, even though it's your field, but at the seventh year it's afkaita. I say that it's not yours, and anybody can come into your field and take whatever they want, or you actually have to take it out and make it hefker. The same thing the Achronim deal with, whether Shmitas Ksafim is something that happens automatically. In other words, automatically, as the seventh year approaches, it becomes the chayv disappears, or I have to do something in order to make the chayv disappear. I have to actually say I forgive the chayv, and the source for this second opinion is the Torah says v'zeh dvar hashmita. This is the dvar hashmita, the dvar miloshem dibur. We have to say it. You have to actually verbalize and say that I forgive you. I forgive the chayv. So the we're not going to get into the Rambam in today's Perek. Talks about a pruzbul, which a pruzbul was made by Hillel Azakin, that kind of takes away any problem with Shmitas Ksafim. Let's say somebody didn't make a pruzbul, so the question becomes whether the loan is still there, or the loan was taken away, and he doesn't have to say anything. And this is negeya. It's a big machlekes. This is a big machlekes harishonim. The Mordechai in Gittin brings the following interesting shayla. He says there was somebody there that he violated Shmittah, so to speak, and he kept on demanding from his friend to pay back his chayv. And but during the Shemittah year, he didn't come to him. He owed him money, let's say year 4, 5, and 6 of the cycle. He somehow didn't demand from him the money on the 7th year of Shemittah. And after Shemittah, at the 8th year, he came back and says, "Where's the money you owe me?" So the guy said, "What do you mean, Shemittah? Shemittah is I don't owe you any money." So the Mordechai asks a question, and he says, "I don't know what to do. Is it true? Is it a fact that Shmitas Ksafim happens automatically?" He uses the word Afkaita de Malka. He says, it seems, says the Mordechai, that yes, the fact that Shmittah came, the 7th year came by, he doesn't owe him anything. However, the famous halacha sefer, a source for many halachas in the Shulchan Aruch, called the Sefer Yereim, which was authored by Rabbi Eliezer Mimitz, and he says no. The only time that a loan is actually deleted is when the malva, when the lender actually says something, actually negates it, and he says, I forgive you. But if he didn't. So this is a big machlekes, whether it's afkaita de malka or automatically, or something that has to think, similar to the machlekes in Shmitas Karka. We'll just finish off again, time constraints. We'll finish off with how this is dealt with, even taka in today's day and age. There is a lot of material in the contemporary response of a Baal Teshuva, somebody who wasn't from before Shemittah, and he didn't write a pruzbul. He didn't write one of these contracts that allows a person to collect a chayiv on Shemittah, and he was a lender. He was a big lender of funds, and then he became a Baal Teshuva. So, and he collected money. After Shemittah, meaning loans that passed by the 7th year. He was a lender. The 7th year, the Shemittah year passed by, and he still collected from his Jewish brethren, collected these loans. So he came to the Rabbanim, and he asked, and he says, "Tell me, what am I supposed to do now? Do I have to pay back the money? Because I didn't make a pruzbul. Shemittah passed by, and I don't want to violate." So Rabbi Vadi Yosef and Rabbi Menashe Klein both have tshuvas about this, and they permit the balva, they permit this Baal Teshuva to retain the loan. And one of the reasons is what we said before, that there's a day that says, which is the Trumas Hadeshin that the Ramah does bring down, that there is no din of Shmitzis Ksafim Bizman Hazeh. And they also connect with the Yereim that we said before, that the only time that the chayv, the loan, is actually wiped away is if the Malbis specifically says it's wiped away. But if he didn't, he didn't say it. So together with these two days, these Rabbanim were matter for this person not to have to return the chayv in Shemittah. The interesting point is the Alter Rebbe brings down, and to conclude, the Alter Rebbe brings down in Hilchos Halva how important it is to make a principle. So the Rebbe in Likutei Sichos Chelik Chav Daled says something very interesting that we should know. If I'm not mistaken, I think maybe Shemittah is next year. I'm not, so it's apropos. Says the Rebbe something very beautiful, that to emphasize the dearness of the practice of a prosbul, that the Alter Rebbe is so, he spends many halachas talking about prosbul. So the Rebbe suggested that even people who aren't owed any debt, not everybody has a debt, not everybody lends people money, so they should make a small loan before Shemittah in order that they could make a prosbul. In order to make a prosbul, they should make a small loan. Interesting, before the shir I saw, I believe it's the Ben Ish Chai, says something in addition to that. It's not exactly opposite, it's in addition to that. He says that even somebody who has loans and he makes a prosbul, he should make one loan not tied to the prosbul, that he could forgive to be kind this mitzvah of Shomit. Seid gesund und stark.